Finally, let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He is the new Secretary of Health in the United States, just confirmed, despite his incredibly colorful and patchy record, especially on the issue of vaccination. His sister wrote a letter and then put it on YouTube and on social media just the other day before the confirmation hearings began, basically saying, don't trust this guy. I know this guy. He is weird. He is dangerous. And that's coming from his own family. He does not represent the Kennedy family name, etc., etc. On the other hand, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is also talking about things that many people who don't particularly like his views on vaccinations really welcome, which is his views on big food, the big food industry in the United States, and all the additives that have been put in, and the general cluster of awfulness that is the American diet and its consequences. Let's talk to Greg Palast. He's a journalist and author who worked with Robert F. Kennedy for Rolling Stone magazine and BBC television, and who had the new US Health Secretary write introductions to 2 of his books. Greg, it's good to have you on the line.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Actually, he was a co-author in a couple of those books.
Okay. So you know him well. What should we make of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being in charge of the biggest health department on the planet?
Okay, you have to understand, and this is, frankly, it's very uncomfortable for me to talk about this, but I feel obligated. I worked with Bobby. I put him on BBC Newsnight, where I was an investigative reporter, and quoted him a lot at The Guardian. We wrote some books together. He was a friend. He was a colleague and a co-author. My problem is that I was on the phone with him, and I have an article at my site, gregpalast.com. I was on the phone with him when I saw him or heard him literally lose his mind. And this started about 10 years ago. And understand, he's had some tough things in his life. From his father was killed on television in front of him, lost a son. And then right after his wife committed suicide, it was just one thing too many. And suddenly I saw this man change. And one of the things that happened is that his mind, frankly, was going. I was on the phone with him when he would forget things that we'd done an hour ago. He said he didn't remember a conversation we had when he was a radio presenter like yourself, and we talked for an hour on a topic, and he couldn't remember. He was upset. He couldn't remember any of this. And there was huge deterioration, and he would go from a very funny guy, has a great sense of humor, and suddenly become irascible and crazy. And frankly, my then British wife, or my then wife who's British, said, we have to get away from this man because he's going to blow up publicly, and we don't want to be standing next to him as my co-author. And it was a very, very difficult situation. But then we found out that there literally was a worm in his brain, eating his brain, that was lodged in his brain. And, there's other psychological issues. Yes, but literally a worm in his brain. And so I would normally be very sympathetic to someone who's gone through these psychological problems, physical problems, but he wants to take his disease and make it a national policy. And this is very dangerous stuff. In fact, it's not just national policy. It'll affect you, whether you're in London or Singapore, because he's called for a hiatus on any investigation of infectious diseases. Now, understand, the United States CDC, which
the Center for Disease Control.
Yeah. They are the worldwide cops watching infections, the new flu that happens every year, whether it's COVID or avian flu. This is the role that the United States has taken on, and every nation in the world actually depends on the U.S. monitoring of infections and identifying them and stopping these infections, literally to say, we're not going to even look at infections for 8 years. Well, I hope the Lord Jesus comes back, because we're going to have a lot of lepers to be kissing.
So you think basically that he is the worst possible person, from what you described, to be heading the biggest health department on the planet?
Totally dangerous. Dangerous to Americans, dangerous to the rest of the world. I'm sorry, Bobby. This is not the Bobby I knew. I don't know who this man is. And he's turned orange, too, like Trump. I don't know what they're doing together.
They're on the sunbed together.
I have no idea.
We're
but
laughing,
the thing is, I'm laughing about something which
we shouldn't be laughing. We shouldn't be laughing.
Because actually, this is no joke. literally millions of people could die. And you combine this with the fact that the U.S. and Trump has shut down U.S. aid programs involving AIDS medicine, involving medicines and basic foods. We're looking at going back a century on infectious diseases. I'm really, really concerned. This goes way beyond the kind of vaccine denial. And understand that his original concerns about vaccines were that there were some vaccines that were there was one that he said had to be investigated about what was called the MMR vaccine, which had mercury in it. And his campaign got the manufacturers to pull mercury out of the vaccine. Great, wonderful. That's the type of thing that Bobby and I did together. What was not wonderful is that then he decided that anything in a needle except heroin and steroids that he gets from Joe Rogan, maybe, or at least that he follows that Rogan principle, that legal drugs are all dangerous. All of them. That anything you inject has got to be a danger. This is a danger to us. This is going back literally 2 centuries.
What about on the positive side? And there are people who would agree with you wholeheartedly, but they say, well, at the same time, he's prepared to take on big food industry. You know, I mean, first of all, is that even possible with Donald Trump's billionaire friends swanning around the White House? But is that a good thing about Bobby Kennedy or not?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's 2 things. It's false advertising. It's deception. I mean, maybe he's deceiving himself. I was at a Trump rally in Georgia. Okay. And there's all these people eating chicken fried Snickers candy bars. And then there's this little contingent at a Kennedy tent, and they're all doing sit-ups and push-ups. They have exercise equipment. When we have Kennedy, America's going to be healthy again. That's the slogan, make America healthy again. No one disagrees with making America healthy again. But Donald Trump is basically ripping apart all the agencies that have already done a great deal to curtail the worst aspects of our really decayed and dangerous food system in America. But here he is. He's talking about health, and I'm at this rally, and they're talking about we'll make America healthy again. I said, and there's their poster boy, Body by McDonald's. And I don't mean to knock McDonald's in particular, but I know
what you're saying.
It's a joke. It's almost a joke. It's a con.
There was that image, wasn't there, not Air Force One, Trump Force One, before the inauguration of Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, Bobby Kennedy Jr. and the president all tucking into buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is not the healthiest food on the planet. And forgive me, Mr. Kentucky Fried Chicken, but and I'm not sure whether
I'm going to tell the Colonel what you just said.
Exactly. Well, the Colonel will be very upset, but I don't know whether Bobby was tucking into it himself or just had it there for show, but it wasn't exactly sending the right message. Greg Palast, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Interesting, entertaining, and on one level, deeply alarming indeed.